welcome. I am Mignon Grayson, and you are on the Sacred Mysteries Worldwide channel. And today's discussion is going to center on ancestors and how to feed your ancestors. If you are just joining me for the first time, I have done a couple of previous videos on ancestors. One, an overall overview of ancestor reverence and connection, and also how to set up an altar. So if you're interested in those topics, please check out the channel and check out those videos. But today we're going to specifically deal with how to feed your ancestors. And there are a few ways to go about that, and we will discuss a few of them here. I always like to start with, this is the way that I learned and that I have developed my ancestor practice, reverence practice. There are many schools of thoughts around the world. There are many schools of thought within the end of the African traditional religions. So there is no one way blanket right or wrong. However you learn it is a way to honor them. So I'm giving it to you based on what I've learned and what I've practiced, and from my elders, and also what I've developed along the way, that I have become close to my ancestors and they actually let me know, or I intuit what needs to be done. Now, ancestors, why do we feed the ancestors? We feed them just like we feed anybody else coming to our house. We feed them to give them nourishment. We feed them because they're hungry. We feed them because we want them to feel good. We feed them because we want to honor them and give them reverence. And we want to feed them to have a stronger connection with them. Feeding your ancestors is actually building an energetic connection with them, opening up a channel, and deepening and strengthening that channel. So when you give them nourishment, that's what it does, because they are no longer in the physical realm, they're in the spiritual realm. And so in order for them to come and do work for us and intervene on our behalf in this realm, it's a great, how would you say, booster to give them reverence by honoring them in many different ways. And one way is through feeding them. And yes, we feed them food, just like we eat food here, so they get food. So we prepare food for them. So there are different ways in which we can give them food and beverage as well. So I will just go on and discuss them here. So that is the reason why we do that. We are building an energetic bond with them. We are honoring them. We are making them feel good. We are letting them know they're not forgotten. And we are, wanting to please them and make sure that they have energy. We're feeding them energy from the food. Now, in general, energy and physical existence, we live in a duality. And in that duality, everything that is physical in this world also has a non-physical and energetic spiritual presence. So you might see it here on the physical realm, but it also has a presence in the spiritual realm. So we're not just symbolically feeding ancestors food, we are actually feeding them food. So the food that you give them has a spiritual counterpart, and it will appear in their realm once you place it on the altar, or you say a prayer that gives it to them. That's all it takes. And now there have been many observations, and to that discussion, there has been many observations that the food that you leave on the ancestor altar, it progresses in its deterioration much differently than it does if you're to sit a plate of food, no prayer or anything just on the side. And if you do that, if you want to experiment, you could put one on your ancestor altar and put the same thing on a countertop or a table somewhere and just see the difference. It's amazing to see how it ages on the ancestor altar. It actually, in my experience, it crystallizes and it almost remains the same with very little decomposition. Okay, so I just want to put that note out there. But moving on, you can feed the ancestors in the following ways. The most simplest way you can feed the ancestors is after you've prepared a meal. You take a tiny plate and you take a little bit off of your plate and put it onto a tiny plate. for them and put it on their ancestor altar. And if you don't have an ancestor altar, you could put it on the countertop or on the table, and you can say a prayer that this is our ancestors. You call out to them. You say, this is for you. I honor you, and I offer you this food for you to partake of. And, basically a simple prayer like that will work. Now, what is nice about feeding your ancestors in that way, it's sort of like a personal touch, such as when you were a child, your elders and the people who took care of you, that you knew of your ancestors, that you had contact with, if you were hungry, and you came up to them as a child and said, can I taste? Can I have some? You would give. And that is such a personal, very intimate way of giving their ancestors food. So they do like to receive food off of your plate. It's an energetic connection that's pretty strong. And it's extremely simple, easy to do without much fanfare. Okay, and I just want to put a little other note in there that a lot of times if you've started to give your ancestors food and offerings of food, and there are times when you kind of maybe let a lot of space go by, you haven't done it in a while, which happens to all of us, and you're in the kitchen and you're preparing food and all of that, or you're getting ready to eat something, you keep dropping bits of food on the floor, and your fork and your knife goes, flying. Sometimes the food goes flying out of your hands, and you're like, how the heck did that happen? It was no way that could happen, or you just keep dropping food. Food dropping on the floor is symbolic, like that, in an unusual way. It is a signal that the ancestors are saying, hey, I wouldn't mind to have some of that food, or to be fed some food. So that is a way of them communicating with you in a fun way, with a little nudge of saying, hey, can I have some of that? Or, don't forget about me. It's been a while. So whenever you can get to it, you get to it. It doesn't mean that you have to stop and give it to them there. I do. I stop and give them some right then and there when I notice. But you could feed them the next time that you get a chance to. The next way that you can feed your ancestors is by, when you're cooking your meal, you prepare a little bit extra because you've thought in advance that you want to actually give a plate to your ancestors. So you cook a little bit more so that like as if you're having another person coming over for dinner or lunch or whatever it is that you're preparing, whatever meal it is. And so once your meal is prepared, I always feed the ancestors first within the intent. When I know I'm going to feed them, I always do them first. I get their plate ready. You can take a full-size plate and give them a full helping as if they're another person sitting at the table, and you hook up that plate and you put all the food on there. And then I like to add a beverage. I like to add also, if I'm having dessert, a dessert on the side. So I give them everything all up front, a glass of beverage, whether it's juice or wine or rum or liquor or something like that, something to go along with the meal. And then I put it on the plate and I serve it to them on their ancestor altar. And like I said before, if you don't have an ancestor altar, you can put it out on the side, say a prayer that this is for them. And if you're doing a big plate, I would also do a glass of water and a candle, a white candle if you can. But if not, keep it simple. Put the plate out, put it on the side, let them know it's for them. Speak it out loud as well. And so in that way, you are giving them a full plate because you feel like you want to just feed them heftily. Oh, and I also want to mention that I make sure I do this from time to time, but at Thanksgiving, my ancestors get hooked up in my house. They get a full, they get plates and they get desserts and they get beverages, and they get it first, and I lay the food out and I say a prayer and I call them and I let them know that this is for them. And now in some instances, what you want to do is you want to call out their names 3 times individually, or you could just say, I call upon my ancestors, this is for you. I call upon my ancestors, this is for you. I call upon my ancestors. And it is in our tradition, to say something 3 times ensures that the spirits hear you calling them. First time, second time, and third time's a charm. So you know that they have been called and they have heard you. Now, when you move along to a more elaborate way, sometimes when you get a reading, it comes up in your reading that you need to feed your ancestors. And through that divination process with an experienced priest or priestess in an ancestral tradition from whatever indigenous practices that you follow, and it comes up, then that is the way to prescribe what is to be fed to your ancestors specifically for them, not even thinking about yourself and you eating at all. It's just all for them. So you are preparing what they call an ancestral feast. And in that way, that is something that you plan in advance. You get all the materials and you cook various different. It's usually like 9 different dishes because the number 9 is symbolic of the ancestors. Because with the number 9, you are ending that cycle of numbers and beginning a new cycle of numbers that is a double digit. So it's a symbolic of the end, which is how we view the ancestors, because they ended in this plane and are starting in a new cycle in another plane. So with that being said, it is specifically for them. And so that would be prescribed. You would go over what to do and how to do it in that, but that would be an elaborate ancestor feast. And I also want to go back to when you want to what I said earlier about giving them a plate of food. If there are times when you are really feeling their energy and you really feeling like you want to give them a nice hefty meal, cook what they liked when they were alive, if you know. Because a lot of us have taken alternative diets, and that wasn't what they did. So, tofu and, a lot of vegan practices and, foods and, or lactose free and gluten free foods. It's not for them. They weren't eating like that when they were on earth, and they don't have the concerns of the physical body like they had here. So you cook them what they like. You want to please them, so you cook them what you like. I mean, if somebody came and gave me a plate of liver, I'd be like, oh, no, that I don't like that. Thank you, but no thank you. I would be grateful that they had the thought, but it would be okay. So you have to think of it in that way. You want to feed them what they liked when they were alive. Last but definitely not least is at the end of your meal, when you have some food left over and it's not enough to put away, and you don't want, but it's too much to throw away. It's more than just crumbs. You want to give that to the ancestors. You don't want to waste food if you can help it. And in the process of not wasting food, you have given it to them and made them happy and nurtured. So you would, put that on a little plate and put it on their altar or whatever it's left. And this is only for the fresh food that you cooked. I wouldn't go in the fridge now that you know this and go rummaging around and making plates of old food that's been in your fridge. You don't want to do that. You want it to be whatever you made that day that's left over, you give it to them. Also, I want to say that what I do and what I've been taught to do is that you have a separate set of plates that you use. You don't need forks, spoons, knives. If you feel like they want that, then you add that. But specifically plates, large plate, small plate, bowl, a special glass, cup. I feed my ancestors coffee every morning. I make coffee and I give them a cup. It's their cup. Now, I use regular plates for them, and I put the food there. And those are their plates. I don't use them myself. They are put to the side. It is important to separate what the living use and what the deceased use. So when it comes to that realm, you want to use what's specifically for them. So you get them their own plate, or you have an old plate is even better, like grandma's china or aunties or somebody that you inherited it from. They don't have to be deceased family members. They could be old. And if it's chipped and a broken piece, a half a plate, I have half plates that I use, and to me it symbolizes that they're on that realm of existence and I'm on this realm, so I'm serving them on that realm. So I have half plates, but I use whatever I feel I need to use in the moment. But I just have it ready. So that's something you can do as well, and I recommend that you do it. You don't use your regular plates. You really need to have their own set. Now, in terms of how long you have the food on the altar, it all depends on how you're doing it. basically you could put it on there for one day, 24 hours, and then, get rid of it after that. If you have a divination that you can, a yes and no divination, you can ask them, how long do you want me to leave the food on the ancestor altar? Do you want it to be, you could go 1 day, 2 days, 3 days until they say yes. And then to leave it there. And that day you take it off. And then you want to ask them, where does it go? Because a lot of times when you dispose of an offering, there's a particular place that it needs to go, and it could go one of the few following places, but there are more places too. But I'm going to mention another here, right here, and it would be first would be the garbage, which is easy. You just put it in garbage. That's garbage that goes out and goes back to the earth when you think about it. And then there is they might want it to go out in your backyard, in your front yard, at the base of a tree. It could also be left in a biodegradable, like a brown paper bag, and left at the crossroads. It could be left at a bank or at a police station or something like that. So these are the different places that you can discard of your offering. And the reason why we ask them is because energetically they know what you need, and why that offering needs to go and be at that place, because it's a continuation of your offering going to them, and them in the process they take that energy and work it on your behalf. So they know where you dropping that offering off and to what that would do for you and what it is that you need in your life. So but if you don't have a divination process that you can ask yes or no to the ancestors, then you just dispose of it in the garbage, and let nature do what it does. But yeah, so that's basically one of the way in which to discard the offering and to find out how many days. Basically, overnight, get discarded the next day in terms of time. If you're feeling like another day is possible, then that's what you do. If you have a problem with leaving food out because we have little friends that come, don't worry about it. Leave it out for a few hours and discard it. They'll partake of it in that way in the amount of time. They know your situation is no big deal. Also, if the offerings that if you don't have an altar and you've left it out on the side, I recommend the next day or after several hours of it being out, you discard of it, because it's not in a place that is just meant for them. So it's no need for you to keep it out any longer than that. Now, all of that I've been talking about thus far has been prepared foods. There are other types of food offerings that you can give to your ancestors. You can give them cookies, pastries, assorted bowl of fruits, nuts, different things, different candies is another thing that the ancestors like. What else? Of course, you can give them individual shot glasses of various liquors or beverages. So these are all ongoing offerings that you can give anytime that you are feeling the need, or if you've sat down and talked to them and they let you know they want it, or you've divined. You've asked them through yes and no divination, would you like some food? Yes. What is it that you like? And you go down your list. So I think that I covered mostly... most of this topic that is for this video. I hope you've gotten some information that you can utilize. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to email me at the@rev.mignon, MIGNON, @gmail.com with any questions, or you can leave the questions in the comments and I will get back to you. You can comment if you like this video. Please give it a thumbs up, share it with the people that you feel would benefit, and check out my links in the below. In the info below, I link my organization there, Sacred Mysteries, and other things that may be of interest to you. Until next time, be well. Have a great time connecting with your ancestors. Until next time.